Think about this for a second. You're lying in bed at the end of a long day, right? And you're just endlessly scrolling through your news feed or like your social media.
Doom scroll. We've all been there.
Yeah, the doom scroll. Exactly. And you're seeing all these headlines. It's just unbelievable. Corporate greed, political corruption, people arguing endlessly over ideology, and just folks being needlessly cruel to each other.
It's exhausting.
It really is. And it's so natural. It's almost like a reflex at this point to just look at all of that and think, well, the world is a total mess and other people really need to wake up and change.
Right. It feels good to point the finger outward.
It's super comforting. But, I mean, what if the biggest obstacle to actually changing the world is the exact way we're trying to change it? Like, what if by demanding that everyone else fix themselves, we're all just throwing stones in a glass house?
It's a completely paralyzing way to look at the world, honestly.
Why?
Because you're basically placing all the agency for change into the hands of the people you trust the least.
Yeah. Exactly. Welcome to the Missing Lessons, where we explain what school never did.
If you're enjoying the Missing Lessons, make sure to follow the podcast, leave a rating, and share it with someone who might find it interesting. It helps us create more episodes and reach more curious minds.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into this exact paradox. We are dismantling this massive, pervasive myth. We're tearing down the idea that you need, like, millions of dollars or immense political power or just the loudest, most aggressive voice in the room to actually change the world.
And when you look at the reality of how change happens, it's entirely counterintuitive to literally everything modern culture tells us.
Right. So let's start right there with that cultural narrative. From the time we're kids, society basically feeds us this idea that change requires force.
Yeah.
We idolize the CEOs who ruthlessly, crush their competition. We celebrate politicians who verbally destroy their opponents.
Like it's a sport or something.
Exactly. We treat domination like it's the ultimate currency of progress.
We do, but history tells a completely different story. If you look at massive social and political transitions over the last century, lasting change almost never comes from domination.
No, it doesn't.
It turns out, when you analyze major campaigns for change, nonviolent resistance is actually more than twice as effective as violent force in achieving real structural transformation.
More than twice as effective. I mean, that feels really hard to believe when you watch the news today.
I know it does.
Yeah.
But it goes even deeper than that. Countries that transition their governments or societies through nonviolent, peaceful campaigns, they are 10 times more likely to become stable democracies within 5 years compared to those that use force.
Right, 10 times.
10 times.
Okay, but I have to push back here a little bit because it is really easy to sit here in hindsight looking at history and admire the peaceful approach.
Yeah.
But in the moment, when you're living through the chaos of a toxic workplace or a wholly divided country, doesn't it always feel like whoever yells the loudest is the one who wins?
It absolutely feels that way.
Hmm.
But we have to separate temporary attention from lasting transformation. When someone yells or, uses force, they trigger our amygdala. That's the fear center of the brain.
Right, the fight or flight thing.
Exactly. It's a biological survival instinct to lock your attention onto the loudest, most aggressive thing in the room.
Yeah.
But what happens next? Force only creates compliance.
Yeah.
And underneath that compliance, it just breeds deep resentment. People put their heads down, they protect themselves, and they just wait for their chance to push back.
So force demands submission, which inherently triggers that drive to rebel when we feel our autonomy is threatened.
Right.
So the loud voice gets immediate compliance but guarantees long-term resistance. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Contrast that with someone like Rosa Parks.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Right. In 1955, she wasn't some seasoned political operator with a massive war chest or a megaphone. She was an unassuming seamstress. When she refused to give up her seat on that bus in Montgomery, she wasn't being aggressive.
No, not at all.
I was reading through the historical accounts, and she later wrote that she wasn't even unusually physically tired that day. She was simply tired of giving in.
And that distinction is just so crucial. She wasn't trying to conquer anyone on that bus. She was simply refusing her own diminishment.
Refusing her own diminishment.
Right.
It was an act of dignified refusal. And that quiet, grounded act reshaped an entire society. Or, look at Gandhi.
Mm-hmm.
Here is a man in simple clothes who essentially overthrew colonial rule without firing a single bullet.
Gandhi is basically the master class in bypassing that psychological resistance we just talked about.
Hmm.
He used what he called truth force.
Truth force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about the Salt March in 1930. He walked 240 miles to the sea just to make salt from seawater. He willingly endured suffering and brutal violence. And why did he do that?
To expose the moral bankruptcy of the whole colonial system.
Exactly. He didn't seek to physically conquer the British. He sought to expose the truth of the situation so clearly that it became literally impossible to ignore.
So when you rely on force, you're demanding that people submit to you. But when you lead with humility and like real conviction, you create psychological safety.
Yes.
You aren't attacking their autonomy so their defenses just don't go up. You actually invite their participation.
Precisely. You change hearts and minds across generations because you aren't fighting their ego. You're appealing to their conscience. We see this with Wangari Maathai in Kenya, too.
Oh, man, yes. She didn't raise a militant army to fight environmental destruction or to, empower women. She didn't just yell at the government until they changed. She just started planting trees.
Just planted trees.
Just planted trees. And that simple, humble action scaled up to over 50 million trees planted. It completely transformed both the landscape and the social standing of women in her country.
Which brings us to a really, really uncomfortable question.
Uh-oh.
If history shows that humility, internal conviction, and leading by example are the real keys to external change, why do we always default to pointing fingers? Why is it so much easier for us to yell at the television than to look at ourselves?
Because facing our own need for change is absolutely terrifying. I mean, it's just so much easier to be the critic in the stands than the one actually down in the arena.
It is. Because looking inward means taking responsibility. We have to start looking at the external world not just as this, random reality we're forced to endure, but as a mirror.
A mirror.
Yeah, a mirror reflecting our collective human consciousness. Every single act of cruelty, every act of greed, every act of kindness you see out there, it all exists within us too, just waiting for the right circumstances.
Okay, I see what you're saying. But
Right.
practically speaking, is that really true?
What do you mean?
Like, if I tell a white lie to a friend or I engage in a little bit of petty gossip at the office, is that really on the exact same level as global political corruption or massive corporate greed? Because that feels like a bit of a stretch.
Well, the scale is vastly different, obviously. Your office gossip isn't bankrupting a nation or destroying an ecosystem.
Good to know.
But, and this is the bitter pill to swallow, the underlying neural pathway and the behavioral mechanism are identical. The prioritization of your own comfort, your own status, or your convenience over the truth is the exact same root mechanism that drives a CEO to hide toxic waste.
Wow.
If we want to fix the macro-level problems in society, we really have to recognize and heal the micro-level versions of them inside ourselves.
Okay, that makes sense. It's the exact same software, just running on a different size computer.
Exactly.
And changing that software is so hard. There's this profound concept about dreams that we were looking at that illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, the motorway one.
Yeah, the motorway.
Good.
So imagine you're having a dream where you're trying to cross a massive, busy motorway on foot. Cars are just flying by at 90 miles an hour.
Terrifying.
Right. And you make it halfway across, but you get stuck on the central reservation. You are completely trapped. You're terrified of moving forward into the unknown danger of the rushing cars. But going backward to where you started is equally impossible.
It's such a stunning analogy for cognitive dissonance and just our ambivalence toward change.
Yeah.
We're all stuck on the central reservation of our own lives. We complain constantly about how toxic social media is, yet we just can't stop scrolling.
Oh, totally guilty of that.
We claim to hate societal injustice,
Yeah.
but we fiercely hold on to our own personal biases because they're familiar. We want the world to be different, but a part of us desperately clings to the psychological furniture we already know. We choose a safe but stuck life over a better, unknown one.
Which brings it right back to you, the listener. Have you ever judged someone harshly for a flaw, maybe for being selfish in traffic or really impatient with a waiter, only to catch yourself doing that exact same thing later that week when you thought no one was looking?
It happens to all of us.
It does. We demand the world changes, but we absolutely refuse to step off that central reservation and cross the highway ourselves.
It's the ultimate reality check. But let's move this from the philosophical to the practical.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people might accept this and say, okay, I'll work on myself. I'll look in the mirror.
Right.
But how does my personal growth stop political corruption?
Hmm.
Like, how does my inner healing actually fix my toxic workplace?
Okay, this is where we get into one of my absolute favorite mental models, the tugboat versus the lighthouse.
Yes, I love this one.
If you want to know how internal shifts create external realities, this is it. So most of us go through life acting like tugboat.
Hmm.
We latch onto our friends, our family, our coworkers, and we use all of our energy literally burning our own diesel fuel, trying to drag them exactly where we think they should go. Like, you need to break up with them, you need to quit that job, you need to vote for this person.
And returning to what we discussed earlier about psychological reactance,
Right.
what happens when you try to tow a boat that doesn't want to be towed?
They drop their anchor. It is exhausting for you, and it just creates massive resistance in them. But a lighthouse, on the other hand, operates on a completely different paradigm. A lighthouse just stands in its place. It's deeply rooted in its foundation, it does its job perfectly, and it just shines its light.
Yeah.
By simply being exactly what it is supposed to be, it safely guides all the boats into the harbor. It doesn't force anyone. It provides the reference point for others to navigate by.
Sociologically, this is known as behavioral contagion or social proof.
Hmm.
People don't generally adopt new behaviors because they were debated into submission.
Right. Nobody likes losing an argument and then saying, "You're right, I'll change."
Never happens. They adopt new behaviors when they observe someone they respect thriving under a different set of rules.
Hmm.
The lighthouse doesn't need to preach. Its very existence alters the navigation of everyone who can see it.
Let's use an everyday example to ground this because I think it's so important.
Hmm.
Say you have a friend who is constantly complaining about feeling terrible, they have no energy, and you decide, hey, they need to eat better. If you act like a tugboat, you print out a strict diet plan for them, you lecture them every time they eat a carb, you try to drag them to the gym, what happens?
They resent you.
Totally. They probably eat a pizza just out of spite to reclaim their autonomy.
Exactly. You've completely triggered their defenses.
But if you focus entirely on yourself, you do the inner work, you change your own habits, you lose the weight, and you show up to hang out with them looking healthier, happier, and full of energy, you are acting as a lighthouse.
Mhm.
You aren't dragging them anywhere. But eventually they are going to pull you aside and ask, what is your secret? How are you doing this? Change becomes contagious when people see you living authentically.
So the most effective way to change someone's mind isn't to debate them, it's to outgrow them and let them catch up.
Exactly. Outgrow them and let them catch up.
If you've ever been guilty of playing the tugboat in your own relationships, drop a like and a comment on the video. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
So easy. But here is where the reality gets truly incredible. Being a lighthouse doesn't just silently influence the people around you psychologically.
Right.
It physically alters your own biology.
Okay, let's dig into this because this blew my mind when we were prepping for this.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't just talking about warm, fuzzy metaphors anymore.
No, this is hard biology. Altruism and focusing on helping others is a fundamental, hardwired part of human nature. When you shift your focus from dragging others, which causes you a ton of stress, to simply shining your light and serving your community, your body literally undergoes a physiological transformation.
It's wild.
It is. For instance, consistently serving your community, say volunteering for just 200 hours a year, can drop your risk of hypertension by 40%.
Wait, 40%?
Yeah.
How does that actually work? Like, how does being a helpful person physically lower the pressure of the blood inside my veins?
It all comes down to your neurochemistry. When you're acting like a tugboat, stressing over controlling others, worrying about the state of the world, your body is in a chronic state of fight or flight. Your brain is pumping out cortisol, the stress hormone, which literally constricts your blood vessels and raises your blood pressure.
Right, you're tense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you act altruistically, when you focus outward with humility and compassion, your brain downregulates that cortisol. And simultaneously, it releases oxytocin. Now, we usually think of oxytocin as the love hormone, but biologically, it acts as a vasodilator.
Wow.
It actually relaxes your blood vessels.
That is unbelievable. So by letting go of the need to control everyone else and just focusing on helping where you are, you're literally opening up your own heart and veins.
Literally. People who shift their focus away from their own egos and toward helping others report lower stress, less loneliness, and they demonstrably live longer. And what's more, this biological shift is statistically contagious.
Contagious how?
Well, when people witness you helping someone, when they see your lighthouse shining, their own brains release a mild dose of those exact same positive chemicals, making them measurably more likely to perform an act of kindness later that day.
Think about the last time you did a random act of kindness for a stranger. How did your body feel for the rest of the day? The literal butterfly effect of biology.
It really is. And the beauty of this is that you don't have to change a million lives to trigger this effect or to be successful. You don't have to be Gandhi or Rosa Parks. Think about Anne Sullivan.
Oh, perfect example.
She dedicated her life to helping just one single, fiercely difficult, deaf and blind girl named Helen Keller. Anne acted as a lighthouse for one person. She didn't try to reform the whole medical system. She just focused on Helen. But that one act of shining her light empowered Helen Keller to become a global advocate whose legacy changed the entire world.
Or look at Jaime Escalante, the high school math teacher in Los Angeles.
Yes. He didn't write policy papers trying to fix the entire broken American education system. He didn't yell at politicians. He just focused on his specific struggling students in his specific classroom. He researched, he adapted, and he helped them pass AP calculus against all odds. He altered the trajectory of thousands of lives just by standing firm in his own classroom. It's not about changing the whole system. It's about taking responsibility for your immediate radius.
But this raises a really practical dilemma.
Okay, what's that?
If we understand the mindset, the humility, looking in the mirror, being a lighthouse, and we understand the biology of how giving heals us, how do we actually execute this without burning out?
Right, because compassion fatigue is real. And honestly, if I just sit around being a lighthouse, isn't that just a convenient excuse to do nothing? Isn't that just passive?
Not at all. Being a lighthouse is highly active. A lighthouse requires constant maintenance, a strong foundation, and a massive source of energy. If you don't protect your own energy, your lighthouse will just crumble into the sea, and you can't guide anyone.
Okay, so what is the actual blueprint for maintaining that light and making a difference? Because there is a really clear three-step strategy here.
Yeah, let's break it down.
Step one, do the research. Before you go barging into a community trying to, fix a problem, find out what failed before.
This is vital for bypassing our own egos. We so often assume we're the first person brilliant enough to notice an issue. By researching past failures, you avoid repeating systemic errors, and you approach the community with that humility we talked about earlier.
Right. You don't want to reinvent a broken wheel. Step two, write down your goals. I know this sounds a bit like a self-help cliche, but the cognitive psychology behind it is real. Written goals are significantly more likely to be achieved.
Because writing it down engages the filtering system in your brain. It shifts a vague desire into a tangible target, so you subconsciously start spotting opportunities to achieve that specific outcome in your daily life.
You need a tangible roadmap so you don't just burn all your fuel.
Exactly.
And finally, step three, find a community. You cannot do it alone. The myth of the lone genius changing the world is just that. It's a myth. Maria Montessori didn't build her global educational empire by locking herself in a room. She worked alongside other people to prove her hands-on methods actually worked. She found like-minded people to amplify the light.
Network effects are real. A single lighthouse is great, but a network of them can safely guide a whole fleet across an ocean.
Yeah.
But again, you have to protect your own energy first. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Right. So let's bring this all together. What does this deep dive really show us? The biggest lie we've been sold is that to leave a mark on this world, you need to dominate it. You don't. You don't need loud, aggressive force. You don't need billions of dollars. And you definitely don't need to crush your enemies. You need humility. You need an unwavering commitment to your own core values. We have to recognize that the external world we are so angry at is just a mirror reflecting our collective internal state. All the greed, the anger, the selfishness you hate, it lives in you too.
We have to stop trying to drag people around by force, triggering their resistance and exhausting ourselves in the process.
Stop playing the tugboat. Start shining like a lighthouse. Root yourself in your own integrity. Do the heavy inner work. Heal your own micro flaws. And let your example, your social proof, guide the people around you. Remember that changing just one person's life, especially your own, can alter the course of history in ways you will never live to see.
A much quieter path, but historically and biologically, it is literally the only one that actually works. Here's a question for you. Are you currently acting more like a tugboat or a lighthouse in your daily life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
It leaves us with one final, pretty uncomfortable question to chew on. We spend so much time demanding that the world changes to suit us, right? Fighting the current, pulling everyone along. But if doing the inner work and changing yourself is truly the only way to change the world, what happens if the world actually does change and you look around and realize you're the last one left, stubbornly holding onto your tugboat, refusing to look in the mirror? If you enjoyed this episode of The Missing Lessons, don't forget to follow the podcast, leave a rating, and share it with a friend. Your support helps us continue exploring the topics school never taught us. Until next time, keep diving deep.